Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told out of Voice of Radio. So today, I want to tell you about the biggest and probably the best Pokemon TCG hoax ever. It's a story that I've heard in passing, in whispers, for years. So I thought I'd finally go and do the research, and I'll be honest with you, it's not actually that easy to find that much information about it. But I think I've got it all straight. So let's have a chat, shall we? It all revolved around Claydol EX. Now, Claydol EX had a Pokepower type shift. Once during your turn, before you attack, you may use this power. Claydol EX's type is fighting until the end of your turn. So as a psychic Pokemon, that could have been a fighting. For 2 colourless energy, you did 20 damage base plus 10 more for each energy attached to the defending Pokemon. And for 2 psychic, 1 colourless, you did 60 damage. And you had the option of discarding a psychic energy attached to Claydol EX. If you do, you discarded an energy attached to the defending Pokemon. So the real question is, was this card good? Not really, ladies and gentlemen. Not really. But going into Nationals 2007, there was so much hype. Let's take a step back, shall we? Now, one of the things to remember here is that we're talking about the days before the internet really kicked off. There were websites, obviously there were websites, but we didn't have the same level of information we have nowadays. We didn't have the same big testing groups that we have nowadays. Things were, I think it's fair to say, it was easier to hide information. And we saw this a couple of times. So the first real World Championship, so to speak, in 2004 was won by Sugiyoshi Yamato's Team Magma deck. A deck that people didn't see coming. Everyone in North America, etc. was playing Blaziken. And along came Sugiyoshi Yamato with, and to be fair, pretty much all of the Japanese contingent came along with these Team Magma decks and absolutely cleaned up. The following year, in 2005, the World Championships was won by Jeremy Moron, and third place, the person who beat in top 4, was Pablo Meza Alonso, both of whom were playing the Queendom deck, which was basically hitherto unforeseen. So we saw 2 World Championships in a row that were won by decks that people didn't really see coming. Now in 2006 we had Jimmy Ballard. Jimmy Ballard, very, very, very good player. And he went and, well, he got second at the World Championships. He didn't win, but he did very, very well. And he did so using an Eeveelutions deck. The winner was Jason Klaczynski with Mewtrick, which was a deck which we were more expecting, shall we say. But Jimmy was quite known for making less usual, more roguey kind of decks. Which meant that he was a kind of person that could potentially make a secret deck and get it out there. And that's what he did. Now, there is an article over on Hey Trainer, though I cannot actually see who wrote the article, but the person who did, along with Jimmy Ballard, came up with this idea to make Claydol EX the next big deck. And information was shared, and deck lists were placed around, and people actually started playing Claydol. We got to the National Championships and people actually started playing Claydol. Although some people actually did kind of well, which is kind of funny. But deck lists were actually shared around. People started actually playing this card, and it led to really one of the big hoaxes in the Pokemon TCG that we ever saw. Because, of course, Claydol wasn't good. It was just a few people who decided it would be funny to try and make everyone believe that it was good. Information shared, deck list posted around, people played the game. Did Claydol win Worlds that year? No, unfortunately. What did win Worlds that year? Legendary Ascent. A Rayquaza focused deck with Rayquaza EX. And, well, to be honest, actually, it played a whole bunch of different stuff. We had Rayquaza EX, Absol EX, Mew EX, Espeon EX, Jolteon EX, Vaporeon EX, Jolteon Star, Jirachi EX. It was a deck that played many different things. You'll notice that even though this deck actually did play 7 different EXs, none of them were Claydol. And if we can look at the other World Championship decks from 2007, the ones that ended up being printed, we can see that it wasn't really that well positioned. I mean, Empoleon was very good at the time. The problem was that Empoleon came along and, well, specifically we're talking about the Empoleon from Diamond and Pearl, and it did pretty big damage. 2 energy, 40 to one of your opponent's Pokemon. 3 energy, 70, flip a coin if heads to one of your opponent's bench. Although do remember at the time we had things like Scramble Energy and Double Rainbow Energy, which made things significantly easier, shall we say. And it wasn't like Claydol really did anything particularly impressive against this. Empoleon didn't have enough energy attached to it for Psychic Boom to be particularly good. It was maybe slightly worried about energy denial from Shadow Crush, but again, we had 3 Scramble Energy, so it wasn't exactly the end of the, it wasn't that bad. Not to mention, of course, that it would use Cessation Crystal, which would turn off Poké Powers and Poké Bodies, which you might be relying on if you are Claydol. Probably not in the Empoleon matchup, to be fair. But it just made things significantly more difficult. So it probably didn't have a great matchup against Empoleon. We could look at Banette EX. This was another one that was pretty good at the time. The problem was, and this was one that was printed, it was the Rambolt deck. It was played with Solrock and Lunatone. It won the senior division, but Banette hit for Psychic weakness, you would hit Claydol for weakness, but had a Darkness weakness, so was not hit for weakness by Claydol. And in fact, it actually had a resistance to fighting, so if you did change a type, you'd be hit by it. And it had a really nice Poké Power that let you move 1 damage counter from either player's Pokemon to another Pokemon in play. The Legendary Ascent deck that we talked about a moment ago, that's the one with which Tom Roos went and won the World Championships, is, yeah. That was an extremely complicated deck. What I heard about Tom Roos was that he was an actual, like, full-on certifiable genius who took up the game for a very short period of time and was basically never seen again. I have no idea how true that is, but looking at the deck list, oh my goodness, it's a very complicated deck. But it basically had answers for everything, and it wasn't particularly scared of Claydol. None of these decks were. And the thing was, Claydol was fine. But Claydol wasn't good. Yes, you could potentially hit for 2 weaknesses, but certainly none of the printed Worlds decks were that worried about it. I know there were some decks around at the time, but none of the printed Worlds decks were, and they're the ones that really saw success at the end of the day. You had an attack which really punished your opponent for energy, and another one that could get rid of their energy, and they could be fun. But the fact of the matter was that the key to Claydol, the key to why the hoax worked, it was a Pokemon that if you squinted and looked at it from just the right angle, you could convince yourself it was good. It's not a terrible Pokemon. It's fine. It is, as I like to phrase it, aggressively mediocre. But if you were told by really good players that it was amazing and it was going to be the next big thing, in an age where the good players were not writing articles and whacking them all over the internet and making YouTube videos and all of that, It's exactly the kind of thing that you could convince yourself was actually real. Alas, it was not. We won't see another hoax like this, ladies and gentlemen. We're not in the right mindset as a group of players. We are far too in tune of things like this, and we've got far too big and open testing groups for this to ever work again. But back in 2007, it actually worked, and that's kind of fantastic. But now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to know your memories. Do you have a Clay Doll deck list that you can share? Do you have any stories? Did you play the deck? Do you know people who played the decks? Were you part of the hoax? Let me know in the comment section. Go nuts! Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCG Radio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCG Radio, or you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassyPlays, where you can find out about a whole bunch of things that don't have Pokemon in, but are pretty gosh darn good nonetheless. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.